All right, so I know y'all done heard about this, but if you haven't, allow me to spill the tea. But I must warn you, buckle up and keep your heads, legs, and arms inside the vehicle at all times because this story is about to get bumpy. So be warned now. All right, let's get to it. This is the Broberg family, and this setting was in the 1970s. This is Marianne, Bob, Jan, and her 2 little sisters. The Broberg family were a part of the LDS community. If you don't really know what that is, it's like a church community. They be going to church, several times a week, While they were going to church, they met this family called the Berchtold family. The Berchtolds had 5 kids. They had a lot in common. Robert Berchtold was a businessman, as was Bob Broberg. Everyone got along really well. And before you know it, they were hanging out all the time. They were even neighbors. Mary Ann and Bob started to notice a weird relationship between Robert, aka B, and Jan, who he called Dolly. One day, B shows up to the house and says, "Mary Ann, can I take Jan horseback riding?" She's like, "I don't know. It's getting kind of late. Jan's got piano." And Jan's like, Mom, no, I really want to go." He's like, "I can pick her up from piano. We can go straight there." So Mary Ann's like, whatever. B gets in the car and tells Jan she's got to take this medicine, that it's an allergy pill because they're going to be around horses. Y'all smell bullshit, or is that just me? Jan says that she does not remember anything that happened at that point. 9 o'clock rolls around and Jan's still not home. Marianne and Bob are upset, but they ain't tripping like I would be if something were to happen like that to my kids. They were like, "Oh no, they're probably fine." Tell me why this family waited 2 days to call the police. 2 days. I'm sorry, but an Armageddon and a zombie apocalypse could not stop me. Jesus or the devil himself could not stop me. But that's just me. Anyway, the FBI gets involved. And the FBI is like, "Dude, he kidnapped your kid." They're like, "No, he didn't." Like, what? Not only was B a pedophile, but he was also a narcissist. Those 2 combined are a combination for disaster. B was a very calculated man. Off the charts intelligent. He had been planning for this moment his whole life. 2 years before he kidnapped Jan, he started in on Marianne. And when I say started in on her, he was calling her, "Hey girl, can you bring me a sandwich at work? I can't get out." Calling her beautiful, all things that he shouldn't be. And before you know it, they're at a church function feeling each other up. She said that he would say all the right things and that he was everything that her husband was not. Slut. And before you know it, she couldn't get B out of her head. And that's exactly what B wanted. I'm gonna try my hardest not to laugh at this next part because it's just holy balls. So B walks into Bob's business one day. This man right there. He says, "Bob, can we please go for a ride? I'm so upset right now." Bob's like, "Yeah, B, let me just get my things. Let's go." They go for a drive, right? B tells Bob, "I hate my wife. She won't do anything with me," aka sexually. Bob could see that B was aroused. And B says, "Bob, please give me some relief, please. This is just kid stuff." Bob felt uncomfortable, but he reached over and performed the act. I told you I wasn't gonna laugh. I told you. It's not funny. It's not funny. What the hell? So not only did B get Marianne, but he got Bob too. What the hell? At some point, B does try to get help. He realizes what he's doing is wrong. So he goes to the church and they send him away to California. He goes away for a little while, and when he comes back, he tells Marianne and Bob that he was molested at the age of 4 by an aunt. And ever since then, he's had fantasies. He told Marianne and Bob that a part of his therapy was to be spending time with Jan, spending the night, all kinds of things. And Marianne and Bob are dumb as hell, obvi, and they let him do it. During those times, B would give Jan vitamins. Later found out they were sleeping pills to make his job, a lot easier. During those times in the night, he was assaulting her. Marianne and Bob thought it was weird, but they didn't have an inkling of what was going on. All right, back to the kidnapping. Jan wakes up in a moving vehicle. She's strapped down to some bed, and there's a radio right beside her, telling her that she's part alien. That her mom slept with an alien, all kinds of stuff, and her dad, who she thinks is her dad, is not her daddy. He ain't the pappy, it's an alien. This dude. The aliens, aka B, told Jan that she needed to have a child before she was 16 years old or her planet was going to be destroyed. And if it didn't work, they had a backup plan, her sister Susan. Yuck. I don't know if I said this already, but they're in like an RV, and the aliens tell her she needs to go out to the living room and meet her male companion. There lying on the couch is B, covered in blood. I mean, he's stretching. And this fool tells her they were abducted by aliens. So this is the first time that B and Jan actually did the thing. I won't go into too much detail about it because it's honestly so disturbing. But meanwhile, back home, her family's freaking out trying to find her. Tony, B's brother, steps in and says, hey, I'll try to find out where they are. B actually calls Tony and tells him that they're in Mexico and that the only way he'll come home is if Mary Ann and Bob let him marry Jan. 12-year-old little girl Jan. He said they were already married in Mexico, but the FBI got his location and the Mexican police arrested him. Mary Ann and Bob flew down to Mexico and got Jan. But poor little Jan was told by B not to tell anybody about the mission, because if that happened, her other sister would go blind and her father would be removed from the situation. Jan still didn't know that he was a predator. He tricked her, so she lied and said that he didn't do anything to her. But her parents knew she was not the same little girl she was before. Alright, so Jan's brought back to the U.S. with her parents, and eventually B comes back too. There's this big old court case going on, and what's his wife? Gail, B's wife. She shows up at Mary Ann and Bob's step and says, hey, y'all need to press the charges or we're exposing y'all for being gay and for cheating on your mans. And they're like, oh no, we can't do that. So they sign some affidavits and basically they just completely drop the case. So B starts getting some kids at school to give Jan little notes, and he's like, hey, call this certain number, and some aliens start speaking and telling her she needs to finish the mission. So B breaks into their house, and Jan's excited because her companion is there. And he's like, we're gonna get through this together. Meanwhile, everybody in the community is just like pissed off at Mary Ann and Bob's family. And they're like, oh, B, we're so sorry that they did that to you. All right, so after the dust settles and everything kind of gets somewhat back to normal, B, this son of a gun, starts calling the Broberg house. And he's hitting up Mary Ann. He's like, girl, I love you, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, why would you do that to my daughter? And he was like, it was to get you, girl. She's like, no, I want an explanation. He's like, if you come down to my motorhome in, I think, Idaho, I'll explain everything to you. So Mary Ann, being the dumbass that she is, goes and sees B. While there, he explains to her that they could have a beautiful life together. And before you know it, B and Mary Ann do the deed. Mary goes home and tells her husband what happened, and he says he's filing for a divorce. Tell me why this trifling sack of corn nuts let this go on for 7 months. Oh, we were just so gullible. He manipulated us. No, girl, you let it happen. You let it happen. So eventually Mary Ann decides she's going to get her head out of her ass and leave him and go back to her family. Like I said, this was going on for 7 months. By the time Bob and Mary Ann got back together, it was time for court. B's original charge was like 5 years in prison, but the judge reduced it down to kidnapping, and he had to do 45 days in prison, and that was it. Him and Gail eventually were getting a divorce, and B bought this like family themed summer park thingy where he invited Jan to come and work with him. Jan begged her parents, and Bob, her father, said no. Her mom said no as well. But B called Mary Ann and he was like, she's getting on the next bus whether you like it or not. So Mary Ann took Jan there. And Bob was pissed off, but Jan was just so happy. And B was telling her, now that I'm getting a divorce, we can finally get married. All right, so Bob is pissed off and Mary Ann says, I'm going to go get her. So Mary Ann goes and picks her up and Jan is pissed off. She starts acting out at home and B calls her and he's like, I want her back. And Mary Ann's like, if you don't leave us alone, I swear to God, B. And B's like, we'll see. One morning, they find Jan gone with this weird letter saying, I'm leaving, I'm never coming back, you'll never find me, blah, blah, blah. And all of them don't think it sounds like Jan, it sounded like B. So Mary Ann and Bob call B and they're like, hey, do you know where she is? But instead of waiting 2 days to call the police, they waited 2 weeks because they were embarrassed from the time before. B's like, please find her, please. I don't know where she is. Please, please find her. Someone has her. So this goes on for about 3 months. No one knows where Jan is. And B's calling the Broberg house every single day. Have you heard from Jan? The FBI and the Brobergs started working together and they were recording conversations from B. And they also were able to find his location. They found him living out in the middle of nowhere in his motorhome. And when they opened up his motorhome, they found basically a shrine of Jan. Pictures everywhere, kind of like a mausoleum or something. But no Jan. A couple weeks later, Jan actually calls her mom. And she's like, hey, just want to tell you I love you guys and I miss you. And they were like, Jan, when are you going to come home? Now remember, the FBI is recording and tapping on all these phone calls. So what do you think will happen to Jan? Also, a security video caught B walking up to a payphone, had the page open, and it was to a Catholic girls' boarding school in California. B had taken Jan there and told the nuns that if anybody came looking for him, he's a CIA agent and him and his daughter escaped from Lebanon. But once the FBI got there, they got Jan and they also arrested B. When Jan got home, she was so pissed off and so upset because in the back of her mind, she didn't complete the mission. When B was in jail, he convinced 2 other inmates when they got out that he would give them $1,000 a month if they burnt down the Brobergs' family business, which they did, and B got in trouble, as did the other dudes. Poor Jan thought that this was the work of the aliens, and she was blaming herself for the whole thing. So we talked about the mission. Jan was supposed to have a baby before she was 16 years old. Jan was freaking out because it was her upcoming 16th birthday, and she still hasn't completed the mission. And B told her that if she had not completed the mission, her family was gonna die. Well, it was the day of her birthday, and everything was perfectly fine. And everything just kind of hit her all at once. And she realized he was lying. The first person she told was her best friend, and then she told her sister, and her sister encouraged her to tell her parents, which she did that day. She broke down and told them everything that he had done to her. Jan says that over all of this time, between being abducted the first time and the second time, and all of the times in between, that B had sexually assaulted her over 200 times. All in a span of 12 years old to 16 years old. B pretty much got charged with nothing. Yeah, he got away with it. Jan grew up and she started going all around, traveling here, there, and everywhere, and speaking at events about what she experienced. She told her story and was trying to spread awareness to what had happened to her, maybe to help the next person. Well, I guess B was showing up at these events. And these biker dudes, BACA, Bikers Against Child Abusers, were there one day and they saw him pull up. So what the bikers do, they chased after him. And B had a gun on him, so he got arrested. And he finally went to jail. Also, Jan got a protection order against him and filed stalking charges. Before they sentenced him, B actually did kill himself. So he never actually got to spend any of that prison time. If you guys want to go watch the full show, it's called Abducted in Plain Sight on Netflix. It's pretty crazy story. I left out some here and there details if you guys want to go check it out. But yeah, this story is the most mind-blowing show I ever watched in my whole life.